Welcome you all. This session, the topic is Java, Hibernate, HQL and HCQL. First, we need to understand about the Hibernate. What is the difference between the JDBC and Hibernate? When you use the JDBC connection, you will be writing the queries directly in the Java. The queries are related to MySQL or Oracle or whatever the database you are using in the backend. When you are using the query for one database and you are hosting the website, and later on, when you think to rehost the website in some other host provider, at that moment, you are decided to change the database. So how will you change the database? When you change something in the backend, the connection, the configurations need to be changed in the code, as well as the queries need to be modified accordingly. So you have to do two things. One is the configuration modification, and another one is the query modification. In this configuration manage, like configuration changes will be a lighter part, and the query changing is the heavier part. Like the big application will have the queries in multiple pages, and there will be many queries. You have to touch those queries to make it suitable for the newer database. All these complications can be avoided when you go for the Hibernate. When you go for the Hibernate, obviously you will have a configuration file with the connection to the database, but the query part will be taken care by the Hibernate. You will be using the APIs there, like save, update. All those are functions, methods. Okay, you will be using directly the save API, the update API, the delete API. The query will be taken care by the Hibernate itself. So in that case, your switching of database becomes a lighter work because the major part is being taken care by the Hibernate. Now, what is HQL and HCQL? HQL is Hibernate query language and HCQL is Hibernate criteria based query language. So whatever I said, save, delete, update or HQL. If you want to retrieve some data based on some conditions, then that falls under HCQL. Once again, you won't write select star from table name where the condition. You will be writing the condition in a Java programmatical way, which will be converted to the corresponding database query by the HCQL, Hibernate itself. So now we will get into the programming. Before getting into the programming, we need the required softwares. First one, what we need? We need the Spring, the IDE, the Spring tool. Okay. I'm not going to use the Spring Boot or Spring now, but I want to set up the IDE which is suitable for all the JFSD work. So let me go for Spring Tool Eclipse IDE. When you type the Spring Tool Eclipse IDE, don't go for that Eclipse website. Just scroll down. You'll be finding something like Spring Tool 4 for Visual Studio Code. So open this. So this is the website where you can find the Spring Tool for variety of integrations like Eclipse or Visual Studio Code, etc. We are going to work with Eclipse based. So you can download the IDE according to your system configuration. In my case, I will be going for Windows x86 64-bit, which is 550 to 600 MB, which can be downloaded and installed. This is the first one. Okay. This IDE, I am going to use it for all the operations in the JFSD course. Second, you need the MySQL. So just type MySQL download. You can able to find the MySQL website in the first. Just open it. Just open the second one here, MySQL Workbench download. Okay. So here you can able to see the MSI which can install the Workbench on your system. You can download and install it. Okay. If you want to go for different version, then the version is available in the achieved here. You can choose the product version. Then you can go for the download. Okay. So these two things are essential, which is already installed in my system. So let me straight away open those. First one, the MySQL Workbench. So already I configured the user as root, and the password I had kept for that. Whatever the password you had given, just use it to open that. Now next one, we need to open the Spring Tool. Spring Tool Shoot 4. This is an Eclipse based one. Okay. Now it is open. So now we have to start the program for Hibernate. How we are going to do means we are going to create a Maven project, and then in this Maven project we will go for the pom.xml dependencies. That means the dependencies will be listed in pom.xml file in the Maven structure. What are the dependencies? You want the database transaction connection and MySQL connector. So all those dependencies we will be going with the pom.xml, and then we will create the files, associated files in the Maven project. So let me create one Maven project now. So file, new, just go for other, type Maven. You can able to find Maven project. Click on the Maven project and give next. Here just click next. It will ask for the type of Maven structure you are creating. Type Maven archetype start. You have to search in all categories so that it will retrieve the data from internet. Maven archetype quick start. So now we are having three matches. We will go the match with the group ID org apache.maven.archetypes. So the Apache based one. This is the basic Maven structure we are going to use. Inside this Maven structure, we will first go for the dependencies and then the associated files. So let me to create one now. So I have to enter the artifact ID, that is the project name. Okay. I will give JFSD Hibernate. So project name is being given. Just give finish. You can able to find in the right bottom something is going on. Creating Maven archetype 33% it is showing. It have to create fully. Let it to create fully. Suppose in the middle, if it is asking anything like yes, just give yes. It is asking here. So just give yes, proceed. So now the file is being created. JSD Hibernate is the file, project file, and you can able to see the form.xml here, and then src main Java in the top. So in the src main Java, we will have our application files, Java files, and in form.xml, we will have our dependencies. That means the required jar files you will give as a code. So it will download automatically and keep it on its resources. And that you can use the class which are inside the jars by importing that. First, we will go to the form.xml. So now you can able to see the form.xml is having certain code in it. The particular part we have to focus is the dependency part and the properties part. In this properties part, we have to change the compilation version to 1.8 Java. I'm just changing. Once you change it, it will save once again. That means you have to save once again so that the project will update. Sometimes the project will not be updating, so you have to forcefully update it. That I will say later. Now, inside the dependencies, you are already having JUnit dependency. We have to go for few more dependencies. First dependency, we have to go for Java Transaction API, TA. So go to Google and type Maven repository. That means all the jar files which are required for the Maven, you can able to find in this Maven repository. So just open this MVN repository. Inside this, just type JTA in the top search. Then you can able to find Java Transaction API. So click on that. Go for the latest version 1.1. Copy this and paste the same code just inside your dependencies. Okay, inside dependencies there are multiple dependency. First dependency is JUnit. Second dependency your Java X transaction, that is JTA. Whatever we are searching is based on this artifact ID only. Okay, I will search everything with the artifact ID, not with the group ID. Okay, the second one, Hibernate core. So just go here to the Maven repository and type Hibernate core, Hibernate -core. Here it is, Hibernate core. Okay, so open the first one. Here you can able to find 6.2.1, which is the latest one. Just copy that. And then paste this. After pasting every dependency, just give Control S so that it will update. So the next one, MySQL connector Python. MySQL connector Java. Okay, because we are going with Java now, so MySQL connector Java. Here you can able to see MySQL connector /J. Just open this and take the latest one, 8.0.33, and copy this and paste the dependency. And finally, there is one more dependency called JAX-B runtime. The JAX-B runtime is to avoid the JAX-B exception, where while you are running, you will get one error actually. That is actually exception. If you are not handling that, that will fall under error and it will not run further. Okay. So to handle that, JAX-B runtime. This is the first one. Just go and pick up the latest one and copy this and once again make it. So now all the dependencies are made. Okay. So what are the dependencies we made? One is Java X transaction, that is JTA, Hibernate core, MySQL connector, Java required. It is actually showing J. I required MySQL connector Java. So second one seems to be proper MySQL connector Java. So let me here pick the latest one, 8.33, and copy the code, replace that. Actually, I want MySQL connector Java, so I'm just replacing this. Okay. And then JAX-B runtime. So all the dependencies done now. What you have to do, you have to update the project once after the dependencies. Right click your JSD underscore Hibernate project file and go to Maven, update project, take this force update and then go okay. So it will update the project forcefully. Then your dependencies are done. Then the next step, we have to go for the application files, the configuration which is required for the database, and then the entity class which creates a table for database, and then the object for the entity class which we are going to store as a record. Each object is a row in your database table. If you are having 10 objects, there will be 10 rows. There will be 10 rows in your database table. Okay. So all these things we have to create. Before that, let me look at the Hibernate framework. You can able to see Java application in the left side. That is what we are going to work now, which will have persistent object. What I had said is entity class. I said, na? For example, in our case, we are going to have employee entity class. So that entity class, we are saying it as persistent object. Then your Hibernate framework is actually having session factory, session and transactions. The least one is a transaction, which is used to do the transaction commits and rollbacks. And then the transaction will be under the session only, because the session object will be used to call the API, like save, update, delete. All those APIs are possible with the session object, and then with the transaction we will commit. Okay. So before the session, the collection of that will be in session factory. Okay. So session factory first have to be started. That then inside the session transaction. And also the other side you are having transaction factory, which is an optional one, like a session factory. But transaction factory is the optional one. Session factory will go for like a mandatory one. And connection provider, which is nothing but the database connections which we are going to use it. And then to the right side, you are able to see JNDI, Java naming and directory interface, which is used to make your resources independent from your distributed application. There will be some naming conversion the distributed application will request for the particular name. That particular name will be mapped with the resources so that the resources will be shared with the distributed application. Okay, between the resource and your distributed application, in between your JNDI will be there. And then the JDBC Java database connectivity, that means connection. This will connect your database, and then the JTA. We know just now we had given the dependency in form.xml as JTA, Java Transaction API. With that help only the save, update, delete APIs can be called. And then these are all connected with the database. Okay. So next, we have to go for the following files. Under SRC main Java, under the package you created, there should be one entity class and one main class. Main class is already there. For example, under your SRC main Java, under the package, you are having app.java. This we will use it as main class. Okay. Second one. We need one entity class. Both we will create. That means in the main class, we will work with some code, and entity class we will create. The second part is under SRC main Java, outside of the package, you need to create one file called hibernate.cfg.xml. This is a configuration file which will connect your application with the database. Whenever you are changing the database, only this file you have to touch to change the configuration, and rest all query can be handled by the Hibernate with the same logic. Okay, so we are separating the connection from the application. So that connection file is hibernate.cfg.xml. Now we will create that file under SRC main Java. You have to create that. So right click SRC main Java, new, and then file. So here you give hibernate.cfg.xml. Hibernate.cfg.xml. And I am creating this as a file, that is the XML file. Finish it. So here you should go with the properties which required for the connection. Remember, those are session factory properties. Session factory will maintain a connection. Then session is the object to do the transactions, that means calling the API. Session factory connection, session API. Transaction to commit and roll back. We already know those are the three levels in the architecture. So we are going to set the session factory properties now, which is a mandatory one. Without that, you cannot connect to the database. So now we will go with the Hibernate configuration XML. I will say what are the things you have to change in this. See, first line corresponds to the XML and the doc type of that. Then you are configuring the Hibernate, that says Hibernate configuration. Inside that, session factory. Okay, this session factory will maintain a database connection with certain properties. So you have to give the properties. The first property, HBM2DDL auto, which says, like, you can use 3-4 values here, like create, update, validate, etc. When you say create, if every time when you run the code, it will create the table newly. For example, you had inserted one value in the first iteration, one row in the first iteration, and second time you are running the program to insert the second row. What will happen now? The table will be recreated. So the first row will be last when you use create option. Okay. Yes, this DDL auto, if you use create here, that will happen. And when you use update, whenever you are running the second iteration, it will create a second row and it will append with the older one. Your table will not be recreated, so your old data will be maintained. So in my case, I'm going with update. And next one, you have to use the dilate. See, I already said Hibernate will take care of your queries. Then who will write your queries? This dilate only will write the queries. Every database is having certain dilate. That dilate will write the query for the API which you are calling. If you are calling save API, it will write insert query for the corresponding database. In my case, we are going with the MySQL, so that particular dilate is being used. Then the connection string, then username, password, then finally the class, the driver support for the connection. You are using one MySQL connector Java dependencies in form.xml now. That particular dependency will have this JDBC driver. Okay, so that driver I am using it. And Hibernate 4 will have this MySQL dilate. And finally, we need to map our entity class to create the database table. In our case, com.klu.jfsd underscore Hibernate is the package. Dot employee is going to be the class. Since it is a class, E should be capital. Now we will create our employee entity class. So how to do that? Right click the package, then go to new, click on class and give the class name as employee. And okay, now we will go with the employee class creation. First, you need to write @entity. This is the annotation which will make this class as a entity class. That means database related class. This means this will create the table name in the name of class name by default. Okay. If you want to modify that, you have to use another annotation to modify. But as of now, I am creating the table in the class name. Just control space or just move your mouse over the entity. It will say to import the entity, you import it. Then next, I need some of the attributes. That means the field name in the database. The column name. First column name is int id. That is the primary key. Then second is string first name and last name. That means I am going to have two columns. Okay, as the first name and last name. Then I need to have setter and getter method for all these attributes. Now right click, go to source, then click on generate getters and setters, select all, then generate. So it will generate the setter and getter for the attributes inside the class. Now we want the ID as the primary key and the auto generated one. Primary key, we all know what is auto generated one. Like every time when I'm inserting the value, I don't want to insert the ID value. I will just give first name and last name. So the ID value will be automatically taken from the previous value. Previous value is 1 week. This value will be 2. Likewise, the sequence will be generated. In that way, if you want to do, first you have to make it as a primary key. Make it as primary key with the ID annotation. I should be capital. Okay. So now You made it as a primary key. Second, you have to make it as the auto generated one. For that, the annotation is generated value. Generated value. So generated value strategy type. Strategy type. I have to use strategy equal to generation type is strategy equal to generation type. You can give control space so that you will get suggestions. Dot the first one auto. So now it becomes a auto generated one, and this entity class is done now. So this is the employee class which we given it here in the mapping file. So hibernate.cfg.xml also done. Then next, we need to go with our core operations. Before that, we need to set up the initial things. Then we will go with the core operations. So to do that, we have to go with these 5 lines to set up the initial things. I will explain what it is. First, we have to import all these things. So from where you will be importing. If you are giving this, it is giving you multiple option to import. Okay. All are from Hibernate package only. So use the first one. Give control space, you will get suggestions. Use the Hibernate based one. Now for the session, you can able to see the Hibernate based one is not the first one, but you choose the Hibernate based one, second one. And for transaction also choose the Hibernate based one. So the first line, this first line is to link your configuration file with the current file. Standard service registry will configure the things with the configuration file. The configuration file name you have to give hibernate.cfg.xml. Okay. The second one is to retrieve the metadata. That means in the configuration files you are having the properties now. These property values will be retrieved as metadata in the second one, metadata object. Then you have to use those metadata. For example, in the Hibernate configuration file, these are the properties of session factory, right? So now you have to use those metadata which are retrieved with the session factory. Now session factory will maintain a connection detail. Under the session factory, you have to create the session. You have to use the session factory object to create the session. This session object can be used to call the APIs. Then finally, the transaction object will actually have the right side as session dot begin transaction like that. S dot begin transaction like that. But that we will write with the query down. That means with actual operation. Why I am saying that each operation, when you commit, the transaction will automatically close. So once again, we have to start the transaction by giving begin transaction. So now we will go with the object creation for our entity. Why we need to create the object? Because with that object only we will enter the data inside the database. So now object we will create. Employee is the class, E1 is the object, new employee. Nothing to pass in constructor because we are not initializing anything in the constructor. We are initializing with the setter and getter methods. So next, E1 dot, we have to initialize the value. How many values we have to initialize? There are actually three fields in the employee class. One is ID, first name, last name. So in that ID is the auto-generated one. So you have to set only the fn and ln. So I am setting fn, that means set fn, then my name, then e1 dot set ln, last name, now the id will be auto generated, the first name and last name is there. We have to save this. How to save this? You have to use session object s dot save. This save is the JTA, Java Transaction API. Okay, we use the dependencies as well. In the Hibernate architecture framework also, I shown that to you JTA. So we have to use the save now. So when you use the save here, the dilate, the MySQL dilate will write the insert query according to MySQL. Now you have to say what is the object to save. E1 is the object to save. So s dot save E1. Then next, whenever you are writing something in the database, you have to commit the transactions. Reading not required to commit. Retrieving not required to commit. That's what I'm saying. But writing requires to commit. First, you have to begin the transaction. So s dot begin transaction. You have to assign that to t. Then you have to say t dot commit. How the transaction will be committed. If you want to do all these things, first the database need to be created in the, that means the name of the database need to be created in the MySQL workbench. What is the name of the database? You can go and check your configuration file in the connection string. Okay, in the connection string, at the last, after the port number, you can able to see JFSD. So this is the name of the database. So now I am going to change JFSD class is the name of the database. So this database first I have to create in the MySQL workbench. Then only I can use it. I will go to MySQL workbench. I will give JFSD class and I will create the database first. See, database created. Then I have to use that database. Then I have to say show tables. There is no tables in the database as of now. We have to create one. While running this, it will create. Okay. Now, come back to your code. Still it is not run. We will try running now. Right click, run as Java application. So you are getting one exception, one error. Class not found error you are getting. MySQL 5 dialect. That means some dependencies which we had inserted is wrong. So we have to correct it. We will try to correct it now. We'll go to our form.xml. In form.xml, the related dependency for the dialect is Hibernate core. So this one we will search again in the Maven repository, because the one which we took is not having the class file. We took from the first one, which is org.hibernate.orm. Let me go with the second one now, org.hibernate only. Okay. So in the second one, pick the latest one and go with the code. Replace the Hibernate core dependency. You can able to see the group ID now is org.hibernate.orm. From that we retrieved Hibernate core. Now we are going to do with org.hibernate as the group ID, and from there we are retrieving the Hibernate core. Now we will update the project once. There is one more error is appearing in app.java. I think we have to re-import these things. But before that, we will update the project so that we will come to know. Update the project forcefully, save it and update it. Just I will remove these import statements and I will import once again. These imports are not working now. I think it is not updated. Let me check it. Now after removing the type, I had saved it. Let me once again update the project. You will check the app.java now. It is now showing the import standard service registry, so you can import those. Just move your mouse over there, it will suggest you use those import statements. You have to import session factory from Hibernate, session also from Hibernate, transaction from Hibernate. Once again, I will try to run now after saving the application. Getting the same error. Let me check. Now I had changed the version to 5.3.1 final. Okay, from the previous version. Once immediately after changing the version, updating the project. Now I am seeing the error in employee.java file. Once again, it is from the import statements. Just I will delete this. I will try to import again from persistence, Java X persistence. I will import. So now it is imported. We will update the project once again. We will try it now. Now it is a different error. Java X XML bind JAXB exception error. So that error is being solved. Now the error is related to JAXB. That means the corresponding dependency of that is this JAXB runtime. So we have to correct this particular part. Now I will try to change this version 2.3.2. I will update the project once. Let me try running once again. Now you can able to see the hello world is printed. That means the data which we inserted and with the ID value of 1 is got into the database. And what is our database name? It is JFSD underscore class. So we will go to our workbench. We'll just give show tables now. It is showing employee table. Remember your E is small. In entity class, your E is capital. Now select star from employee. You are getting the data here. Let me proceed further. Now I will have just a statement here. Inserted data. Data inserted. Second one, I need to go with the updation of data. If I want to do update, for example, I need to update the value which is inserted into the database. So first I have to retrieve the object. After retrieving that object first name and last name, I have to change it in the program with the setter method. Then I have to use s.update to update it. Before updation, you have to retrieve the object, that is mandatory. So just I'm giving the command. Second one is going to be retrieved. Now I want to retrieve the data. So I'm retrieving the data in the name of E2. Right side, the actual value to retrieve. Yes dot you are having the find method. Okay. So use the first one. You have to give the class to find, then the primary key to find in that class. That means the first one is a table, then second one is the primary key, kind of. Okay. Now the retrieved data will be in E2. Now you can modify the E2. Update. Just modify E2 dot set first name. I'm setting to JFSD and E2 dot set last name to class. I had updated programmatically. Now I have to insert the updated one in the database. How to insert? Like you have to use a session object to insert. Yes dot update. This time update. Then what is the object? E2. It will update with the help of primary key. Already E2 is having the primary key of 1. Then next, we have to begin the transaction once again, because every commit will actually close the transaction as well. T dot commit, begin the transaction and commit the transaction. Then one identification to you. Data updated. And one more identification in the middle, that is retrieved. Here, data retrieved. So we will check now whether updation is working or not. Run as Java application. You can able to see data inserted. That is a second data. We are using update as DDL. Okay. Here you can able to see the configuration DDL auto as update. That means it will append the data. The second data will be inserted. The first data is retrieved and the first data is modified. And then the final statement is printed. So we will go to the database. We will run the query again. You can able to see the first data is actually modified and the second data is newly inserted. Now we will go with the delete also. For deleting also you have to pass the entire object. Already we are having the object as E2. So we can delete that. Directly we can go yes dot delete. The object name is E2. It will delete the object with the ID 1 actually, because we are retrieving the object with the ID 1. Then similarly, T equal to yes dot begin transaction, T dot commit transaction. Only the reading operation doesn't require the commit. Other operations you have to go with the commit. Now let me try to delete it. Let me check whether it is working or not. I think we have not printed any statement here. But it will be deleted. You will check that in database. We deleted the ID with 1. And the third value is inserted with the ID 3 this time. The first value is retrieved. It is modified once again. Then it is deleted. So the ID 1 will not be in the database. 2 and 3 will be in database. So let me run this. You can able to see 2 and 3. And ID 1 is not there. Okay. That means it is working. Then These are all HQL transactions. Now HCQL, criteria based transaction. Okay. HCQL based one. To run the HCQL one, before that I will comment these things, because when I'm trying to delete the object which are not there, or when I'm trying to retrieve the object which are not there with the ID one, it will create an issue. So I will just comment from here. And to here. Okay. So now HCQL you will go. So criteria based, you have to retrieve the object. First, you have to create the criteria. So criteria is from Hibernate package. Criteria space C is the object. Now you have to use session object to create the criteria. S dot create criteria is coming. You have to give the class name type to create the criteria. This class name employee dot class. For this class you are creating the criteria. Then you have to add the criteria, C dot add, with the restrictions dot, what is the restriction you are going with? All these are restrictions. Okay, so we will go greater than 2, like that. Okay, GT greater than is there, 2 times GT is there. The first one is actually getting the property name and the object value. We will go with this one. Restrictions greater than, ID is the property name, and ID should be greater than 2. That means only one value I have to retrieve, 3. Next, suppose if you are having 2, 3 values, it will be a list, right? So we will have list now. List should be imported actually from java.util package, and list of what type? Employee class type list. List name is L. So what is the value of list? C dot list. C will give you the value of list. Then we will go for print of that. If you print L, you will get the address actually. So L dot get, you are using the list now, so you have to use the get method with the index. Index of 1 corresponds to first row, which is retrieved. And in the first row, I want the name. So get FN, get first name. I want the first name of the first row retrieved. Better you retrieve the ID also, then only we can able to identify from which row it is coming from. Here I will say get ID, get ID as well as get first name. Now we will run it. We set the condition as greater than 2. That means only ID 3 with my name should be retrieved. Run the Java application. Actually, how much your list size? You are retrieving the data, na? You are retrieving the data greater than 2. That means greater than 2 is only one row. Your list will have only one row. You will use 0 here to retrieve the first row, then it will work. It is saying that list is like we are using the index out of the list size. Get of 0 will retrieve the first row actually to you. You once again run this. Now you can able to see the retrieved data is 3 and my name. That is exactly coming from this third row. This is now HCQL, Hibernate criteria based query language. This HCQL you will be only using for retrieving purpose, and there are multiple conditions. Whenever you will give c.add restrictions dot, you can able to get multiple conditions here. One of the example I had used is GT greater than, and I had applied that. Similarly, you can go for other conditions too. So now finally, what are the concepts we had learned today? We started with the Hibernate introduction, why Hibernate required over the JDBC, and then what is HQL, what is HCQL. Then with the frameworks of Hibernate, we also created pom.xml to insert some of the dependencies. Then we created the necessary files, the configuration files, the entity class, and we edited the main class which is already there in the Maven project. The Maven project is actually based on Maven archetype quick start. And then we configured the XML file for the database connection. Then we had set up the initial things in our main file. After that, we went to HQL, Hibernate query language based one. Finally, we went to HCQL based one. I know you might be requiring the pom.xml dependencies. So I will try to give you that. You can replace the dependencies in your pom.xml. Exactly, I will give you the dependency which I used for this. So you can add it, you can append it in yours. It might be visible lesser, but don't worry, to copy and use it. Then finally, we had inserted the data, we had retrieved the data, updated the data, deleted, and we retrieved criteria based one. I hope so you understood the concepts today and you had practiced with me parallelly. Thank you.